Well, this is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for the City of San Angelo. I'm Lori DeCello, Vice Chair, and I'd like to call this meeting to order at 3:32, Thursday, October 25th, 2018. This is my first time running a large meeting like this, so please bear with me. In some cases, I will be reading from my notes so that I get it correct. This board takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on any item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the board. The board may request an item be placed on future agenda or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. Do we have any items for consideration that are not on the agenda?
Public comment?
Public comment? Okay. At this time, I would like to introduce and welcome our two new board members, Allison Watkins, the AgriLife County Extension Horticulture Agent and Park Commission member. We welcome you.
Thank you.
And John Mark Hogue, partner attorney in the local law firm of Jackson Walker and a previous city council member. So welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I have an introduction too.
Yes.
So if y'all remember Ida Rios, she left a few months ago for personal reasons to take care of her family. And so we went through a lengthy process of taking applications and doing interviews. We got 48 applications, narrowed it down, interviewed, and we selected Ina instead of Ida. Ina Gray.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Brent Casey, Recreation Manager. We have an introduction. This person actually has been with us since 2014, but mentioned to me the other day that I have never been to a Park and Rec board meeting. So I said, oh crap, let's fix that. So she is here today. Sandra started with us as a part-time employee and worked our summer camps as part-time, and then she was hired on as a recreational coordinator. And recently, just in about the beginning of the summer of 2018, we hired her and promoted her to recreation supervisor. So Miss Sandra Pena, you want to come say hi?
Hi.
Hello, glad to have you. Thanks for allowing me to be here today. It's great to, meet everybody all
We hope to see a lot of you.
Yeah.
Bring,
sir.
bring the mic down right down. Just talk about what you do, the things that you supervise.
Oh, okay. So I do oversee the youth sports that we have in recreation. Right now we're in youth flag football. We're actually about to host the state youth flag football tournament in a couple weeks on November 10th and 11th. So that's one of the sports I do, as well as youth basketball, which we actually began registration for that. So that'll begin in January. I also am over the pool, municipal pool. Fun one, and same with the summer camp. This past summer was the first year I took over the summer camp. And I worked it before, like Brent had stated. I was, coordinator at both locations, Southside and Carl Ray. So I kind of knew the process of how everything went. So this summer was the first summer I was, over both sides, and so it was really fun. But that's really all I do right now, and then I help out too as much as I can for everything else that we have.
Thank you. And it sounds like you do a lot.
A little bit, but thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're welcome. We're glad to have you here. So the consent agenda. Consideration of approving the August 23rd, 2018 meeting minutes. Do I have any corrections?
Madam Chairman, I move we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second. Now I vote for,
Public comment.
or we haven't comments, discussions? What do you want me to do?
Right. Call for discussion then vote.
Okay. Do we have a discussion on the minutes? Well, that's pretty quiet. Okay. So can we take a vote? All those for? Aye. Those against? Okay. I forgot to count how many people we have. 1, 2, 3. So that's 7 for and none against. Okay, you're on.
All right, thank you so much. So, consideration of requesting just for kicks to use the multi-use room at Southside Recreation Center at a discounted rate, recommending any related matters there too. So, this is a picture of the room at Southside Recreation Center. It's not a great room. It is a very old facility, but it is does meet their needs and works well for what they have in there. We have replaced the ceiling tiles and paint here in the past couple of years and made it look a little bit better. So it does look better than it did a few years ago, but it's just a large room. The program, it's a dance class, many different variations of a dance class. We also have Miss Lauren White here, so I'm sure she may want to come up and talk in just a few minutes. She is the instructor and works for Just for Kicks. They've actually been in the facility at Southside Recreation Center. This is their 4th year. So they've been in there on Mondays and Tuesdays every year, is my understanding. It's around 4 hours on Mondays and around 2 hours on Tuesdays. And they currently pay $200 per month for the fees of using the facility. What's required to pay and is approved by City Council is unfortunately a lot more than that. The reason that they haven't been paying the full amount was because of a past employee had approved them to that is no longer with the City of San Angelo to be in the facility for a discounted rate. So the agreement that currently is out there with Just for Kicks has never been signed. At least I've never seen a signed copy. So we are attempting to fix that and correct that and get them approved at the discounted rate and move forward with it and allow them to use the facility. The requested discount is to stay at what they are paying right now, which is $200 per month. The room is currently rented out at $50 per hour, which is what is approved by City Council, and it's a minimum of 2 hours. So they meet the 2-hour requirements, but it is a price of $50 per hour. So it's a rather large discount, comes up to $10,500 if they were to pay the entire year, which is an 8-month session of what they have. It starts in September and ends in April. Thank you. So that's a rather large amount. What they pay us currently is only $1,600. The requested discount comes because they honestly just can't afford it. We're all for the dance group to be in there in our facility. It's exactly what we promote in recreation. It's something that we would like to continue for them to be in there and continue to allow them to use it. So the staff recommendation or staff proposal is to allow them to continue at the $200 per month rate, with the exception of on Mondays. They're currently in there until 8:45 is when their class ends. So I'm adding just a couple minutes to get them out the door and everything like that. So we would like to add what we charge other people, other groups as well for their room, and that's an additional $25 to pay for that staff, because currently the hours of Southside Recreation Center are from 3 p.m. and we close at 8. So $200 plus the $25 per hour for the extra hour on Mondays. But with that, it will change next month because we will stay open later because we have so many basketball teams, which Sandra runs, usually around 150 teams. So we need all the practice space that we can get. So that facility will be one that will stay open until at least 9 p.m., allowing more teams to practice. So once that kicks in, then the $25 rate would not even be an issue because the staff would already be there.
I've got a quick question. About how many students do they have, and how much do they charge?
Currently, she has 54, and it ranges from $33 per student to $36 per student.
That's for the whole session.
Yes, that's per month.
And she may want to come up and talk about the program too.
Yes, Lauren, would you like to come up?
I have time to read a statement? Okay. Dear advisory board members, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak before you today in favor of your collective consideration for the allowance of a continued reduced rate for the Just for Kicks recreational dance program. I've had the opportunity to direct this program for 7 years, and the Southside Recreation Center Activity Room has been home to our rehearsals for the last 4. Just for Kicks Dance has over 35 years of operation, serving 21,000 students through 200 community programs nationwide. And our San Angelo program was the second program to start in the entire state of Texas. Excuse me. As a recreational dance program, we have the exclusive opportunity of providing quality dance education to a largely underserved demographic of youth in the San Angelo community. Contracting lower rate rehearsal space allows our program to be able to offer dancers and their families competitively affordable rates in comparison to privately owned studios. Families with financial barriers are able to enroll students with no previously required experience on a month-by-month payment plan, and children are encouraged to grow their skills in a leveled environment. I have over 25 years of dance background, all of which started for me in the 2nd grade with a recreational dance program in my community. I continued in that recreational dance program from 2nd grade all the way until I was able to audition for my multi-title national championship high school dance team in Forney, Texas. Not only did that dance program equip me to make the team, but I gained the knowledge, skills, and leadership abilities that laid the foundation for me to go on to lead the team as captain my junior and senior years. After graduating, I moved to San Angelo to attend ASU. I auditioned for the ASU Angelettes dance team where I danced for 4 years and was the captain my last 2. After graduating with my bachelor's degree from ASU, I was hired as the Angelette coordinator. I coached for 2 years before leaving to bring Just for Kicks Dance to San Angelo. Additionally, I have danced semi-professionally for 2 leagues and judged multi-years of high school auditions for both the Central High School Texans and the Lakeview Chiefettes dance teams. I also started a special interest Girl Scout troop that specifically exists to provide technical dance training for middle school girls in order to prepare them for local high school auditions. Although I'm extremely proud of my dance background and resume, I'm not sharing all of this information and history to brag. I'm sharing this information to hopefully provide an example of how much one recreational dance program that positively impacted a 2nd grader from a little town in Texas is still positively impacting a community 25 years later. I'm sharing this information to let you know that I've lived and danced in this community for the last 14 years. I've judged dance auditions in this community where there were over 70 candidates, and half of the girls had the desire to make the team, but not the financial access or the resources for training to prepare themselves. So I use my dance experience, coupled with my knowledge of community need and the Girl Scout mission of building girls of courage, confidence, and character, to create a troupe where girls can pay $25 for the year and get the training that they need to stand side by side with candidates whose families could afford private lessons and still make their teams. Instead of trying to start my own studio where I would have to pay thousands of monthly overhead fees and my dancer tuition would have to be double or triple our current rates, I researched and found a way to be able to offer the same quality service to students regardless of socioeconomic obstacles. We have enjoyed and are thankful for the last 4 years that we have spent in contract with the city of San Angelo, and we greatly desire the continued opportunity to practice at the Southside Recreation Center Activity Room. However, we cannot do so without your valuable consideration and approval of a reduced reservation fee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lauren. I met you, this past summer doing some work for Girl Scouts, so I do know that you donate some of your time. I didn't realize that you had donated that much time to our 2 high schools and to the children here. So I like to thank you for promoting recreation as you have. I guess I have a question for Brent. How did you come up with I know how you got the $200 because that's what she's already paying, but can you tell me how you come up with the 25?
That's what we charge the gardening group that also uses the facility on occasion. So when we do not have a staff member there, they're required to pay that $25 per hour because it cost us about that to keep the facility open. for electricity, staff member to be there, and everything else. So that's where we came up with that 25.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I move we accept the recommendation of the staff. And thank you for the information
Just
on
had
that
one
program.
I just
Okay,
had one
hold on.
question.
Sure.
Is Just for Kicks, and I was looking at it on the website, is it non-for-profit? It's not for profit? Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I had.
These numbers that you quoted a while ago are not in our background information. Can you,
Yes.
it was recommended about $5 an hour by, where
Yeah.
did you get that number?
The recommendation in the memo, I think, was 300 to 350 a month.
Yes.
But in digging into this a little bit deeper, we did change that recommendation to what we presented, which is $200 a month plus $25 an hour at times that she has the classes. When we don't have a staff member there, we have to hire a staff to bring them in.
What does that break down into? So it's $25 an hour, but you want to break it down. How much does it break down to in your numbers? Is it something like $8.33 plus the other 25 that you?
Per hour?
She has been paying like 200.
She's been paying $200 per month. Yes, sir. How many hours she's in there per month? Like October, there's 5 Mondays and Tuesdays. So that's going to be a little bit
I
more
was
than.
told 24 hours in this brief.
I'm sorry?
She's in there 24 hours a month in the brief.
It depends on how many weeks are in each month. But yes, an estimate would be 24 hours. Yes, sir.
Average. Yes.
So September when she started.
That breaks
only
down
had
like $8.30 an hour, 33 cents an hour. I think that's.
But that's when we already have staff members in there. The facility is already open.
Yeah.
So those members are
Well,
open.
for a facility that large and that nice, it seems like we're taking a hit on that.
Aren't we already getting money from the basketball being in there? Do they have to rent that also?
Well, the coaches come in and run it, but we do have 2 members that are there from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. the majority of the time, depending on what we have scheduled. So, yes, the basketball teams, they all pay about $550 per team for the league, and then we do not charge them for their practice times. So we just appreciate them and let them go into the gyms. Our gym space is not adequate to control and to have enough space for our 150 teams that we have in our league. So
Right.
we're very grateful that they keep coming back to us instead of choosing someone else. But yes, those people are in there to watch the
So
gym
they're
and the
they're
entire
already
facility.
there.
The 2 staff members are already there, absolutely, except for that last hour on Mondays during certain times of their 8-month period.
I think they're not paying enough. I think it should be raised at least $10 or $12 an hour. I mean, and I still feel that, I mean, you can't go anywhere and rent any facility at all and not pay $100 or a couple of hours.
How many other groups rent that particular part of the building
It gets
throughout the
rented
month?
out. It gets rented out for different things. There are no groups. That's one of the reasons that we don't want to lose them is because
Right.
we believe in what they're doing in there, and we're all for the kids being in there. But there is not a steady list of people that are in there using that facility. The gym is a separate thing.
Right.
We increased the gym by like 700% revenue last year. But that was also just tightening up on things and figuring out, okay, this wasn't being done exactly correctly, so now we're going to do that, and people are starting to pay. So the gym is the huge space in there that is used all the time. This room is not used all the time. There's not people kicking the door down to get in there, obviously. I'd also like to add that not all that money goes to Miss White. That money goes to Just for Kicks, and she, correct me if I'm wrong, she is an employee of theirs, so she gets paid
right.
some from them.
She's an
But
employee.
not the money that the kids pay that we spoke of does not all go to her. So
And she makes they make a larger profit on it than she does. The way the statement kind of reads. So,
It does appear they get the majority of the revenue.
excuse me?
It does appear that Just for Kicks gets the majority of the revenue.
Yeah. I don't think it would be unreasonable to, make $15 a day, and that runs out to about $450 or so dollars a month for 8 months. I think we need to rethink those numbers.
Well, Brent, how long does this go? Is this for this coming year?
We actually allowed her to go in there last month, September, continue paying what she's been paying until we got it all worked out.
But I mean the contract's for a 1 year period.
Yeah, 8 months, yes.
Okay.
So, yes,
Okay.
September through April, yes.
Any other comments?
Is there a second to Mr. Dursky's motion?
I
No.
think it was seconded.
I'll second it.
Okay, wait a minute. What was the motion? You had a motion.
I made a motion that we accept the staff proposal on this.
Second.
So we want to take a vote, or we
We'll
want to have
just-
further
Public
discussion?
comment?
You may want to just go down the row and see if anybody has any comment.
Well, this is my first time, so I don't have a lot to say. I'm just taking it in, but I think I would be in favor of voting yes.
I think it's a great seed program, like she said, for a lot of activities moving forward for the city of San Angelo and the schools. And I think a program like this, a discounted program, needs to be in place. I think it gets a lot of kids into the city recreation center that wouldn't normally be there. And we probably get some overflow from that in some of the activities that the city rec department puts on. So I'm for it.
I second those comments.
I agree. I believe that being able to use that part of the south side at the same time that it's already open is a benefit. Plus, she's providing something that we have in our, what do you call it? What we want to
Recreational
promote.
activity. Yes.
So, and seeing that it's 8 months to go, if we wanted to, we could revisit it, because I do understand that Just for Kicks seems to be getting the most of it, so it's kind of makes a profit of sorts. So we could probably revisit this when that contract's over, but I'm for it now.
I love it. I love the idea behind the program and reaching out to, like she mentioned, the lower income side and the people who don't have the means to pay for the more expensive programs, and the fact that she's a quality instructor to do that for these children.
I stand behind what I said. Maybe I'm reaching too high, wanting too much, but at least the recommendation here, $300 seems very, very reasonable to me. We have to make some money too to keep the doors open, the building maintenance and electricity. So, we can't just give everything away. That we have a government that's doing that, and it's not working well. So we have to share equally in these costs.
Okay, so we have 6 that are for, and
Take a vote.
we still need to take a vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all those for? Aye.
Aye.
Those against? We have 6 for and 1 against.
Thank you.
We'll take the recommendation and we'll submit a legal service request to create an agreement that will take to city council. So in terms of the term, my thought was to do a 3-year agreement, but if you want to do something shorter, like a 1 year, which sounds like you wanted to revisit it, we could do a 1 year with some possible extensions. But if you want us to bring it back to you after the first year, I need some guidance.
I'm really okay with it going for the 3 years, but I was just trying to take into consideration that if our costs went up or something like that. Because you have told me before that the $25 would cover the utilities and stuff.
Well, we may be able to do like a 1 year with some possible 1 year extensions, and if we see that there's an increase in cost, we don't necessarily have to kick in the extension. It can revisit it.
Okay.
That was part of the motion.
Just want to get direction in terms of the term.
You don't really have to do an extension. Can't you just put a provision in there that says the utility costs can be adjusted if they increase or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good thing we have an attorney on our board.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Lake Nasworthy?
Nazareth. This is a continuation of the discussion from the last meeting. So we started talking about the improvements, and in reference, you have a chart that's been updated, but it's not going to be on one of the slides that shows the improvements we talked about, updated. And at the last meeting, there was a motion that was approved to put the improvements on the capital improvements list. I'm looking for my chart. Do each of you have a chart? It should be in the packet.
I don't see one in here.
Double checking.
Yeah, I don't see that one on here.
This one, Carl, right?
It's not attached to this.
Part of the packet sent out. Does anybody not have it? If not, we can get copies of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, for some reason I don't have mine with me, but I had it the other day.
So let me go through the presentation and we can come back to the chart. So we talked about all these different improvements on this list, on this slide, and at the next slide. We started talking about each one, and then we started talking about the boat ramps, and then there's discussion about how many boat ramps there are, and we wanted to clarify how many there are and where they were, and a little more detail about of all the improvements. So that's why we're bringing this back. So on the list is the trail mentioned along Knickerbocker, basically from the what's it called, the neighborhood Walmart, along Knickerbocker, connecting to the lake parks and the lake residents, the formal birding areas or informal birding areas, one along Knickerbocker and possibly the other that was in the Gateway study some years back. We'll show that here in a second. A trail along the hill, boat ramp repairs. There's a total of 13 boat ramps. Debbie and I went out and inspected each one some weeks ago. Restrooms, there's a total of 9. The fishing pier that's at Mary Lee Park. I talked about additional beach west of Spring Creek Marina, adding a miniature golf. We talked about that being more of a commercial endeavor. Adding a splash pad. It's undetermined where that would be. Relocation of the nature center, which was also mentioned in the Gateway study. Trails around and through the parks and the residential areas of the lakes, as well as some other items. Okay, Lake Nasworthy. The one birding area which could be informal is the one along Knickerbocker. This is Knickerbocker. This is that trail from the Walmart headed towards the lakes. As you know, this is Beatty Road, and this area to the west often is full of water and somewhat of a wetland. The thought is to create a trail, and then you might actually have a boardwalk that comes out into it that folks could use to watch the wildlife or something like that. And then the other one, which could be more formalized, is the old fishery site that's below the dam on the east side of the lake. And that was in the Gateway study. And the text is bad on that, but it kind of shows you what that could look like interfaced in the old fishery hatchery site, where you have a road, parking, interpretive center, trails, a pond, and some bird viewing areas. The hillside trail, and it'll show up again. Just hand them out and make sure I get one. It'll show up again in another slide. But the hillside trail is, as you know, folks often come park out here by the KOA and walk the road that's around the hillside, the hill. And there is some conceptual idea of creating a trail that goes up on top of the hill and goes around the hill. That's the hillside trail. The boat ramps, I've got maps that show where these are. There's a total of 13. The Spring Creek Park ramp is new and well appreciated. The Middle Concho Park ramp, improvements to that, as you know, are now funded. We got an increase in the grant funds as well as the city's increased match to begin that project this coming year. All other boat ramps need some improvement, and we have a list from the HOA, Lake Nazareth, the HOA, of the recommendations of what ramps should be improved. Beatty Road, and we'll show those here in a second. South Concho Park on the west end, Knickerbocker Road ramp, Mary Lee Park, the west end ramp. And to be honest, a lot of these don't need a lot of improvements. What the HOA is basically asking for is extending those ramps, making sure that the approach into the water is a fairly smooth approach, adding some docking so once you get your boat in the water, you can pull over to the dock and load up. That is wherever there's docking that doesn't exist. Adding portable restrooms where there aren't any, or fixed restrooms if we can afford it and there's service. So in general, they're not asking for a lot, and the cost really shouldn't be that high. So the boat ramps we're talking about, I'm going to show all of them, and I'll point out the ones that the HOA has recommended as priority for improvements. Beatty Road ramp is one of them. Knickerbocker Road ramp is another one. Although Red Bluff ramp is closed, it does need some improvements, but it's not on their list of priorities at this time.
Is it functioning?
Sorry?
Does it function?
It's closed.
It's closed because it doesn't function?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Working from the left, Middle Concho ramp, there's two of them. This is the one, as soon as you approach the park and get into it, this is the one that's funded for improvements. There's another one on the east end, which is in decent shape. It's smaller, but it's not on the priority list for improvements. The Spring Creek Park ramp is new and good. Hughes Point ramp, which often is not accessible because this section of the park is closed off. It's not on the HOA list at this time. Move over to the Marina ramp. There's a ramp here. It's decent, but I don't think the public really know it's available very much. But it's not on the HOA's list. There's one ramp here in Mary Lee Park by the boat concession. It's pretty narrow. It's not on the list at this time for HOA. This one is. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That one's really not Mary Lee Park. I think it's right off of Joy Road and Fisherman's, isn't it?
Which one? This is Mary. There's two in Mary Lee.
Those row of houses.
We stopped at this one, if you remember.
Right. And that's the one that probably needs
Okay.
to be worked. But I don't know if I'd call it Mary Lee.
Technically, it is. If you've got
Oh, is
another
it?
name for it, let me know.
I don't know what that park's called right there.
I added Fisherman's Road as a description. This one,
It really is off of Fisherman's.
we're talking the same one, just a different name. South Concho Park on the west end is on the list, HOA. And there's one on the east end of that park, and then Pecan Creek Ramp. On site, these are the ones the HOA has recommended for improvements. This is at Beatty Road. So you can see the conditions out there. It's not a bad ramp, but you can see there's potholes. There's not any restrooms. There's some docking. The biggest problem is actually not in the picture, but you see this buoy here. It's marking an underwater obstruction, but there's a series of buoys just at the end of the ramp that's marking some underwater rocks. So the HOA has requested that those be removed because once you get your boat in, you have to navigate around it.
And also the extension of the ramps.
Extension,
Because they
yeah.
drop
Make sure
off.
it's a
That's
smooth,
the main problem with most of the
smooth
ramps.
transition. That's the case for all of these. This is South Concho Park West. I believe this one has some issues on the side. There's a drop off on the side.
And it didn't have a floating boat dock there.
Right. So anywhere there's, improve the ramp, the extension, add restrooms, add docking where they don't exist. Knickerbocker Road ramp, fairly decent condition. There's no restrooms, and improve the extension. This is Fisherman's Road in Mary Lee Park.
Excuse me, why do we need restrooms at every ramp?
Public use, if you've been out in the water in the boat for several hours, come back and...
No, but you can go somewhere else and get off at a restroom that's currently functioning?
Yes, this is the HOA's request. Those are the ramps. There are 9 restrooms. South Concho Park, Mary Lee Park, Hot Slough Park, Middle Concho, 2 of them, Spring Creek Park, 4 of them. Only 2 are hooked up to sewer, Mary Lee and Hot Slough. All the rest are on septic systems. We do have one at Middle Concho Park funded for replacement, and in that project includes connecting it to city sewer. So we'll have 3. This is an example of our restrooms, nothing fancy. This is the one at Mary Lee Park. One of the ones at Spring Creek Park. We talked about the pier. It's at Mary Lee Park. Here's the Nature Center and the old marina. This is the pier. We had an engineer firm out of Midland do an assessment of this about 3 or 4 years ago. They, based on their assessment, mostly because of the piles, you can't really see it, but a lot of the piling is rotten on the end. There's not much of the pier attached to the pilings. They recommended we close the pier, and that's what we've done. It's remained closed since. So this item is already on the CIP, but it's not funded.
Didn't they want it moved?
Most folks just want a new pier.
Where it is?
That would like it where it's at. We really can't use the pilings that are there, so you basically have to remove what's there and rebuild.
We talked about putting a shade at the end of it.
Yes.
For in the summer, they'd have a shaded area to fish.
Redoing it on the end, you could put a shade structure, and you could rent that out. One of the items the HOA is interested in is improving the beaches, adding a beach. There is one beach here, but it's not much of a beach left at Horseshoe Bend, and then adding a beach somewhere else along this route, and I think you're talking here. One concern with adding a beach here is that containing that sand so it doesn't slough off into the channel of the water, which is a design challenge.
Something the boaters, the people that are boating on the lake, desire to have a place where they can beach their boat. And
Right. We only have one beach at this time now. It's at Mary Lee Park, and it's closed for boats. It's basically only for swimmers. Improving the trails and connections and relocation of the nature center. As you know, the nature center's at Mary Lee Park. It's not in good condition. It's really in poor condition. There's been talk about moving it, but it's an unfunded project. In the Gateway study, there was a concept of creating a new Spring Creek Park entrance off Knickerbocker Road. You see the road here, and creating a family nature kind of area where you maybe have some climbing ropes and outdoor experience. But the thought is to add the nature center somewhere in there. So that's one of the ideas. And an interesting thing about that is that it's very close to the entrance to the airport. So there's been some talk about developing the frontage of Knickerbocker as you leave the airport, including commercial development here with the hotel and marina. So it kind of goes in line with that. Back to the chart. All those items we've talked about are listed on this chart. It shows now whether those items are on the capital improvement plan, whether they're funded or not, and has some associated notes. And then at the bottom, there's some other requested items from the HOA to address that aren't necessarily CIP related. So at the last time we talked about should we as the board recommend a priority for these items? And so that's kind of where we left it. The board wanted more information on all these improvements, which I hope we've done today. And we talked about the possibility of prioritizing these items. So at this point, we're looking for some sort of recommendation from the board as to what we do from here, as well as some discussion.
Carl, I don't know if you want to do it at this time or not, and you may have hit on it just a second ago, but we've got some new board members. You may want to kind of go back over how this is financed and where that situation's headed.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good point. A question about how to finance this. The Lake Nasworthy has a trust fund, and that trust fund was generated from many years ago. The city owned a lot of the properties around the lake, including the residential properties. Sometime in the past, the council decided to go ahead and sell those properties. The sale of those properties has added to a balance of funds in the trust fund. The city does use the interest earnings from that trust fund in the past for improvements, but now they use the interest from the trust fund earnings for maintenance and operation of the lake parks. But there's about $15 million, a little less than $15 million in this trust fund. The thought was to tap into some of this trust fund for these improvements, and the idea was to, because that trust fund can't be spent without taking it to the public in a referendum, you have to put it on a ballot and let the public vote on it. And of course, that won't be done without a city council wanting to put it on the ballot. So there are potential funding sources from that trust fund. There are other issues out there, but it's not really our focus. But sewer system, making sure whatever development out there that is added has adequate service for sewer. That's a concern, but that's not within our scope.
Right.
And I think also the controlling the tule weeds, the amount of tule weeds out there, which are kind of straws to the sky of the water in the lake, keeping that under control was.
You can see a lot of here, all the dark green areas. Sir.
trust fund originally set up to do?
I have a
I think
copy of
it's
that.
improvements.
Simply put, I just want to hear, I don't want to read the whole
Pretty sure it is for improvements.
wherefore and therefore. Is it just to maintain the lake, or was it used to, was it there to expand the lake if needed and buy back property, or what?
It's a good question.
To you.
Do you have it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's on section 36, Lake Nasworthy. The Lake Nasworthy Trust Fund, which is called Fund Hereinafter, is hereby established, which shall be managed as a separate trust. 20% of all lake lot lease payments and the proceeds from the sale of any lake lot shall be placed into the fund. Lake lot shall not be sold for less than the fair market value as determined by an appraisal approved by the city. No portion of the principal of the fund shall be expended for any purpose unless authorized by a majority vote of the qualified participating voters of the city of San Angelo at an election held for that purpose. 90% of the annual investment income from the fund may be used by the city of San Angelo to pay for lake and river improvements, services to enhance water recreation, and the elimination of related litter and pollution. 10% of the annual investment income shall be added back to the principal of the fund. A public hearing must be held on the proposed uses of the investment income during the budget and budget amendment process. No designated park, recreation, or wilderness area at Lake Nasworthy may be sold unless authorized by a majority vote of the qualified participating voters of the city of San Angelo at an election held for that purpose. And the city of San Angelo may retain or obtain easements or right-of-ways on the lake lots, or may impose land use controls or other regulations to ensure protection of the city's water supply, elimination of blight and pollution, or for any other public purpose. And those are the 5 points under Section 36, Lake Nasworthy. So that kind of gives you an idea.
Does anybody know how much interest they make off that per year?
I have my book with me. I think it's about 350,000, maybe less than that.
360,
I
approximately?
don't quote me. I can get you that answer.
Malamente?
It's somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000. I'm recalling, but don't quote me. Each year.
But we can only use 90% of that income for improvements, because it said 10% was to be reinvested into the fund itself.
Right, and I'm just quoting the amount that's available.
Okay. Carl, would you let them know what kind of discussion that we had with Francis in preparing for this meeting, talking about the mayor and the city manager? Would you kind of let them know about that?
That was next.
Okay.
So we, Parks and Recreation, seems the majority of these items that are being talked about by the Lake Nasworthy HOA. So we've been kind of leading the discussion on what there is to be done, what we want to do. But there are other items that are being talked about. So there is interest by the mayor, the HOA, and the city manager to kind of coordinate all of this. So we're not doing this alone. But the question is, should we make a recommendation on what those priorities should be now or later? And the thought is to make sure it's coordinated with the mayor and the city manager, as well as the HOA.
I think what we're really trying to focus on is what would be a great package of improvements that we can turn around and sell to the citizens of San Angelo. You know, we want items to be in that package when it goes to vote, so the city of San Angelo can say, wow, you know, that's something that I can use even though I live on the north side of town or east side of town or whatever, you know, that it's beneficial to everyone as a citizen of San Angelo. So that's kind of what we're trying to keep in mind, is these are items that can be beneficial to anyone in the city when they come out to the lake, you know.
The only concern is we don't have all the items that are being talked about. We have a good majority of them, and we've been running point on this because we do have the most of them. But the desire is to make sure this is coordinated with the rest of the city and leadership. So the question is, should we make a recommendation now on these improvements, or should we make a recommendation a little bit farther down the road?
Well, have you heard anything about any of the talk that's going on, and have you managed to talk with the city manager and the HOA to find out exactly what it is that they want? Because when I look at the things that we want to do at the lake, they don't seem to have require as much money as per se updating the sewer system, which in my mind should happen prior to some of the other updates going, especially if they want to move commercialization in and just general updates. So I don't know. After discussing this with Francis and Carl, I would like to move that we table the prioritization of the Parks and Recreation related to the improvement items so that we allow the staff to work with the city manager, the mayor, and Lake Nasworthy, the HOA, to come up with an overall list of improvement items that might be brought forward to the public in referendum for consideration. Once they get this list ready and it is drafted, we would like the opportunity to make a recommendation on it before it is officially placed on the ballot in the referendum. How does that sound? Thank you, Carl.
See, I know you come to most of the city council meetings, so you may hear more things than other board members about how this fits in with the overall picture of city projects and city council direction.
I think they would love us to do this, but I'm not so sure we should. I have an opinion that we have a right to be part of the negotiations, and I'm not ready to give up any rights that I have to it. I see some things here that I could go for, but a miniature golf course, is just, I think, outrageous. Even as regular golf is on decline, it appears, according to what I've heard about Sunset course and what have you. I don't. There's some of these things that I just can't get behind at all. And a trail that goes all the way to Walmart, I have no idea. I don't get it, but I think we should make a decision among ourselves and then pass it on to the city council as it is normally planned. So.
I need some direction.
Well, is there a chance that we can go ahead and table it from this meeting and form a committee that could work with you and quite possibly the city manager and the HOA as a representative from our advisory board?
I have a question. Carl, I noticed on the report you've got it broken down by things that are on the CIP and those that aren't, and then the funded part. How do these items fit? And I haven't looked at the CIP lately, but how do they fit in with the current goals on the capital improvement plan for the city overall? And how far away are they from being reached through regular funding mechanisms?
How far away they're from?
Yeah, I mean, is there a plan in the near future where funds could be freed up to do some of these things, or is it one of those? Well, we got we got streets and roads and sewer systems and all that to fix first.
The capital improvement plan is really a collection of projects that have been identified
Yeah.
that are either needed, could be done, or would be nice to do, and then they're either categorized as we want to try to tackle these in the next 5 years, primarily if they have funding, or as future projects.
And that's kind of what I want to know. Where are these projects in the scale on the capital improvement plan, if you know?
A good number of them aren't on the CIP yet.
I know.
And as you know, the CIP isn't necessarily a funding tool. It's just a project
I understand.
identification tool.
I guess my question is just, some of them look like they've already been identified as issues that the city wants to tackle at some point.
Right.
I'm just kind of wondering where they are. I mean, particularly, I think the ones that might be that might be a way to help identify things that you might
Okay.
want
Well,
to narrow down a list on.
At
Is what
present,
I'm talking about. But that's
at
just-
present, most of these are in the future category. We want to tackle it. The ones that are on the CIP, most of them are in the future category. The ones that are
you've got the boat ramps as a yes for funded.
yes, that one is within the 5-year frame.
Okay.
It's funded and it's scheduled to be tackled.
And isn't it true that on that particular boat ramp repair, there was a grant granted
We
to
have
help pay for part of that?
right the Middle Concho boat ramp, the one we looked at here just a while ago. It's a 75% grant, boating access grant from TPWD, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, with a 25% city match.
So do you think it might be possible for some of these other boat ramps, that we could apply for a grant
It is
for those
possible.
as well?
It is possible, but we need to finish this one first
Gotcha.
this year.
Okay.
Let's see. The fishing pier is on the CIP, but as I recall, I think it's on the future project. I'm just looking at the ones that are on the CIP. And let's see. Some of these, the splash pad is on the CIP, but it's
Yeah.
undetermined as to where it is. It could be at the
Right.
lake, it could be somewhere else in the city. But it's not funded as well.
Yeah. Same thing with the nature center, but you have to relocate.
On the CIP, but
Yeah.
it's a future project.
Well, and
The only one of these that is funded is the boat ramp project.
And if I'm not mistaken, Carl, when I was on the old recreation board, there was a trail that was planned back in the day from, say, Loop 306 out to the lake, a safe walking, jogging trail. And that's been in our long-term plan for quite a long
I
time.
believe the 2007 MPO bike and pedestrian plan it's in that plan. I'm pretty sure. But again, it's a plan. It's not necessarily a funding mechanism. So, to get back to the question, the only one that's in the active we're going to tackle the next 5 years is the funded item.
but that's kind of my point is I mean, and I'm new here, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know something about the CIP, but it would seem to be if, there's two issues. One, if you start doing a project that's on the capital improvement plan that gets jumped ahead because of these funds, regardless of the fact that it's restricted funds and they can only be used for that, you're going to have opposition because why are you doing that as opposed to fixing the streets? Second is, if we really want to come up with a list of things to recommend, it would seem logical that we'd want to dig more into where these things fit in with the CIP. And, those would obviously, if they're already on the CIP, then that's something I think we can look at. If it's not on the CIP, I'm not sure why we would even want to go there at this point until, I'm just thinking out loud more than anything. I'm not really making a proposal, but that would seem to be a logical way to proceed.
Well, one reason to put them on the CIP is just to make sure that folks know it's been identified as something we'd like to do. It could be placed on the future list.
Well, and I understand. I mean, the CIP kind of has morphed over time from just what's the real infrastructure needs to, kind of a wish list too,
Right.
which is fine. But I know, that's the whole idea of categorizing them and the ones you want to get to. And so I guess what I'm just saying is anything that I think personally that the city ought to do ought to be in accordance with whatever the CIP plan is that the city has approved, and things that are outside of that, a miniature golf course, for example, or trails, things that have not been identified. Now, if they've been identified on the MPO plan or something like that, then that makes sense to at least explore it and look at it. I'm just talking about a way to go about, if, I don't know what the politics are going on that. We're talking about with the city council or the city manager, but that's just my thinking as a fresh look from the outside, is why wouldn't we go back to the CIP and build it off of that?
Well, and the way the CIP is full of project is projects are either identified by the public or staff, and then they're recommended to whatever associated board there is, and if they move forward from there, they go forward to city council, and city council either approves those items on the CIP or not. So, I mean, I guess your question is, should we?
My question is, I mean, wouldn't we have already, or this board have already done something like that?
Well, we kind of do it every year.
Yeah.
Because the budget staff asks us what projects should we identify to be on the CIP. Then we have a discussion at the board every year as to what those should be.
If something has not been identified to be on the CIP that's on this list now, I'm not really sure that's a priority. I guess is what I'm saying. As far as if you wanted to come up with a way to prioritize a list, to say this is what you think the priorities ought to be, maybe I'm talking in circles. I don't.
Well, and those are the questions we asked at the last meeting.
Okay.
One,
Yeah.
well,
I wasn't here, so.
right. One, do we want these items on the CIP? And that motion was made. And then the second item was, let's prioritize them. That's when we said, let's take a step back and look at them in more detail. So
really, we're really trying to identify some of these items to be put on CIP, and then in regards to the boat ramp item, we've got those prioritized as to which ones we'd like.
right.
As
attention
usual, I'm
paid to.
talking out of ignorance, so.
But we haven't voted on any
Yeah.
prioritization.
We haven't.
You haven't had a second either.
All right, that's correct.
Right. So, well, I made the motion to table the prioritization. Maybe I should amend that motion so that we table the prioritization, so we set up a committee that looks at it to decide what we actually want to move forward with, so that it does make it on the referendum when it comes around.
Okay.
Does that? What do you guys think of that? And Deb,
in.
would you be willing to be on it? And Steve?
I'd like to see these items added to the CIP list and your recommended priority list of the boat ramps to be included. As we went out and looked at them, and we tried to pick boat ramps in different areas of the lake and not just in one side or the other, just so all areas of the lake, whether you're coming or going, there's going to be a boat ramp in your area that you can utilize that's in good working order. And that's how those priorities were come up with that Carl's presented to us today. So I'd kind of like to go ahead and move forward with putting those items into CIP as we've discussed today on the list.
You saying all these items? Because we did have a motion last meeting that talked about adding the items. Now, the list did change a little bit since the last meeting, so if y'all want to revisit adding items to the CIP, like Mr. Hogue is talking about, I'm definitely open to that. But the motion is to set up a committee to work with the HOA, the city manager, the mayor, city staff, towards the referendum, focusing on the referendum. We can, if you want, we can revisit this when we annually look at CIP items. We can revisit this, whether you want these added to the CIP or not. At some point, if the items go to the referendum, they have to be on the CIP.
Okay.
'Cause we can't tackle a project unless it's on the CIP, approved by city council.
So the only changes that you made from the last time was that you actually went out and added the particular boat ramps.
We listed all the boat ramps and we prioritized those. more information about the restrooms and the pier.
Well,
So there's still a motion and not a second on,
yeah, and actually there are several motions and no seconds, so,
Comment?
yes?
yeah.
Some of these things are very high-quality ideas, and like the pier and the boat ramps for sure. And throw in a couple of bathrooms. I can't get behind all of them, but and the sewer. In order to do the bathrooms, we'd have to focus on the sewer,
Right.
which is to the airport and other places out there is really in need of service, is what my understanding is, and so I think and if we can enlist some of this. Trust money to accomplish those things, I think it'd be very worthwhile to do that, and it would help the sales tax and everything for the city, and we would all live happily ever after a little better. But all of these aren't worthy. I can even go for a splash pad out there, even though it's next to the water. It seems a little strange to me, but you don't want your little kids playing in the water, so maybe that works. But which we could charge for, have more like a city pool situation, which would bring income, and they're not very expensive to do, and then they have little snack bars, and they can kind of support themselves a little bit. So, but I think some of this trust fund can be enlisted. The CIP is really a list of the city, in my understanding, is really a extra funds that the city would like to accomplish during a given year, and they have a whole list of projects already, and they only work on 2 or 3 or 4 a year. They don't accomplish more than that. So.
Well,
I would, and they're funded through the city, where this would be funded through the trust fund, which would expedite things. It would get the people at the lake happy, and feel like they're moving forward, and I think it would be good for the city too, and as I mentioned. So some of these, I think we could, but all of them, to all these trails and relocations and everything. Trails are pretty inexpensive, really. I mean, you just kind of grade a path and put some cobbles, and they don't cost a little. But if there's right-of-ways or something like that down to Walmart, and you got to cross a railroad track and yada yada yada, where sidewalks we probably have some kind of a right-of-way along that Knickerbocker already that is just not developed. But I don't know why we need to the Walmart.
It's to the neighborhood.
Whose idea was this? Walmart's?
No.
Well, it's connecting that neighborhood.
Yeah. But
So there's a
don't know
safe
what to do.
passageway for people to be able to exercise, whether you're walking,
Well, they
jogging,
are already,
riding a bike. There's
have
no safe passageway from town out to the lake. None.
So Carl, in the interest of time, because we continue to talk about this, what can I do since we have no seconds on any of the motions?
Right. Well,
I need help
in the
since-
default of any recommendation or any action, I'm going to be looking to city manager's office to say,
Anyways.
we're talking about this stuff, but we can't really grab onto anything yet. We need to work together. I like the idea of a committee, at least that way that keeps
Yeah.
it going. It keeps the board engaged with
Yeah.
the discussion.
Because we have the committee that works on the CIP, plus this committee to make sure that it gets on the CIP in the appropriate prioritization. And that's how I would like to table it to a committee. But I need a second.
I second that,
I don't
Okay.
think you table it, though. You don't.
and I'll volunteer to be on that committee.
To form a
Right.
committee to work on the
yeah,
prioritization.
right.
It's not
Okay.
really tabling. It's just
Okay.
we're not going to bring it back
Hey, I
to.
don't know what word I'm using.
You just refer it to committee.
Okay, refer.
It's a tabling of sorts because the committee will look into it and then come back to the board with the
Yeah.
Give a
discussion.
more precise list.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Any
I
more?
can second that.
I think we
May.
already had a second.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
all right.
I'm always worried about finances, I guess, on everything I do. But anyway, this one thing here that I don't think we've talked about is some private money on some of these. You know, there may be a company in town who may want to do the nature center, which would be real good, I think, for some bigger company, or even the trail from Walmart to wherever. Yeah, there may be somebody wanting to sponsor that trail.
And we could get grants too.
Yeah, and you can get grants from a lot of different organizations. So when you're doing your study, you may want to do some of that kind of work too.
Okay.
What?
So what do you need me to do?
Well, just make a final call for discussion on the motion.
Okay, all right, so we've got a motion to put this to a committee. I have one committee member, Deb.
It's
would you-
dodging.
Steve, and a second. Would you like to be on the committee?
Yes.
Okay, so I have two committee members to work on the Lake Nasworthy Parks CIP, to move it to the CIP. Do I need to vote,
Would-
or am I
We're not necessarily moving it to the CIP. I thought the committee was to work
to
with
work with it?
the collaborative effort with the HOA, the city manager, and the mayor, working towards the referendum. What items may or may not show up on the
Okay.
referendum?
All right. So I have two committee members. Do I have anybody else?
I'm assuming that either the chair or vice chair will add to that committee.
Oh, okay, we could let Francis add to
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I guess.
So we're okay? Can I move to the next?
Is everybody clear on the motion?
Or do we, okay,
If you already made the last call for discussion, then you can take the vote.
okay, so let's take a vote for. Aye.
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 And those against? Motion passed. Okay. Ah. So we're pretty short on time, but let's move into,
I can move through these quick.
okay.
Did you want to read the next item, the caption?
It's all on you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's consideration of amending the city ordinances to allow the Parks and Recreation Director the authority to waive certain specified ordinances related to the use of parks for public special events and recommending any related matters. So I'm looking for some recommendation here. So we get a handful of events throughout the year that should, most of them do, but not all of them do, should get waivers for ordinances for their activities for those special events. And that to do that, that requires identifying what those requested waivers of ordinances are, taking that to the city attorney's office. They develop, they review the matters. They develop a resolution. We take that to city council. City council, it's always been on a consent agenda. City council looks at those, considers those, and votes on those. As far as I've been here and doing these, it's only been once that one of those items has been pulled off the consent agenda to be discussed, and that was for the Blues Festival. And I can't remember what it was. It was either the setup or the noise ordinance. So it's very rare that they get pulled for discussion.
Why would you have anything to do with the Blues Festival when it's on the city streets?
Because it's on the city street. The
It's not a
special
city
event,
park.
No, it's the
Okay.
special event policy is
Oh,
on
the special event. Okay.
right. Is it on
Okay.
public property? 50 more people open to the public. So it's on the street. So it's
Got it.
city property. So there's rarely any issues, and to be honest, some of these events are not getting the ordinances waived to have their events, and that does cause some problems, especially when the police are involved and they have to enforce the rules, the laws. So the ones that are common that I would be interested in having the administrative authority to approve, and this is only for special events, not for anything else. Driving and parking on areas not designated for vehicles, use of golf carts associated with the event on the park property, posting of signs related to the event, whether that's sponsorship signs or event signs, placement of tents, canopies, and vendors. That doesn't mean they don't get the permits for those, because you have to get the permits for tents of a certain size, but it's the placement of those tents, canopies, and vendors. But I'm not asking for authority to administratively approve items that are out of line of the noise ordinance. I do think those need city council approval. Call me chicken. So that is what I'm asking for. Yes, sir.
Wasn't there something like this done recently, improving administrative power to one other group, and it was approved? It was on the simple things like this also, and it was approved, but they only had to have they had to clear it with the city manager. And I think we should do something like that too. The city manager, that gives you
Some oversight.
a second, and yet
Yeah.
it can be quick.
I'd be okay with that.
In writing.
I'm good with that.
Otherwise, it would expedite things.
What happens if staff wants to deny a request for a waiver? Do they have any options?
I guess they always have the right to appeal that. I guess they could appeal that to the city manager.
Was it in the code department that was happening, that they had and that they were given some leniency like that?
I think he's asking the city attorney in the back.
Yeah.
And there's different areas where the department director has some authority to waive administratively certain ordinances. And this is a similar thing I'm asking for, just for simple, routine, community special events.
Who's been doing this previously? You've been doing this anyway, haven't you, most of this?
Well, if I have, I wasn't doing it correctly. If I've waived any ordinances in the past for events, it's been incorrect to do that. But we typically do take these through the city attorney's office to city council for approval. We took one recently for the car show at the lake, last Saturday or the Saturday before.
That was last Saturday.
I'm just trying to streamline the process of not to take all these things to city council. Saves city attorney's office some time and saves city council some effort.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve that ordinances recommended to be waived under authority of the Parks and Recreation Director and the city manager.
With the oversight of the city manager.
A second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second.
It'd be like an appeals, since you mentioned appeals, whatever you guys bring to the city council, that includes some sort of appeals process for anybody who might have an issue with your denial, if you deny?
If I denied a request, I think they could appeal it to the city manager.
But isn't the city manager going to be part of that's the process? That's not going to be part of the original approval, is the city manager?
Well, typically right now, for special events, it stops at me, but if it relates to any ordinances, I've got to take those to the city attorney's office, city council. But you're saying if I deny a request to waive some of the ordinances, how do they appeal that?
Yeah, if somebody wanted to appeal it, what would if you denied it and they were something that would normally have gone to the city council,
Right.
and if they deny it, they know it's flat out. But at this case, they're going to assume that there's somebody higher than you and want to go
I'm thinking
higher.
it's the city managers.
So
Would
take
be
it
the
to
next
the
level. City attorney.
Generally, if there is a process where a city council typically approves something and we move it to a manager or the city manager to approve it, any appeal right will go to the city council.
Okay.
So if Carl and Daniel are the ones who approve it initially, or they disapprove it and somebody disagrees, we would give them an appeal right. But we would give them a right to go somewhere, and it would more than likely be city
Right.
council.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All righty. Can we take a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? it looks like we have a unanimous vote. Okay. Now to the Riverfest.
One more item. We can do this pretty quick. Discussion on the Riverfest event regarding its purpose and continuation and recommending any related matters. So the staff report that went to the board, the recommendation here may be a little bit different from that based on some discussion since that went out. So just right quick, we started Riverfest because we had finished the river improvements and we wanted to recognize the 100th anniversary of Santa Fe Park. That's how Riverfest started. After the event happened, the committee talked amongst ourselves and said, do we want to have this event again? And we kept saying year after year, yes, let's go ahead and have it. A couple of times we went to city council to ask for some hotel occupancy tax funds to help pay for the event. Those requests were denied. City council approved us having the event as long as we could raise the funds to have the event. So we hit the street, got sponsorship revenues, and the event itself makes some revenue. So for the last 6 years, the first year we actually did make money, and there was a separate designated revenue and expenditure account set up for Riverfest. It's a separate account, self-contained. All revenue goes in, all expenses come out of it. The second, third, and fourth years, we were in the black for each of those years, and the fund balance, the account balance grew. The year before last, we broke even. This last year, we went in the red $6,000. The account still has about $25,000 in it, so we're still good. To be honest, I personally have been getting beat up every year about this event because it conflicts with other events, 16 de septiembre, some events downtown. It only brought in notable heads and beds. The first year we had the color run, we had 2,000 people. It was run by an outside organization. They marketed statewide, so we confirmed we had at least about 250 people participating in that came from out of town. But the event now is really just a local event. It doesn't really bring people from out of town. Staff recommendation, I'll skip that because it changed. So the thought was to end Riverfest. And so the thing that I didn't want to lose about Riverfest was all the fun that the families and kids and adults were having during the event. And of course the concerts whenever it didn't rain. And it rained almost every year like it did last year, or this year. So the thought was to split out the event and have a separate music festival, like a mini Austin City Limits, which would be nice, and then have a separate recreation event. So, and the hope was maybe to take those funds in that account and split them out and give some to recreation and some to civic events for their events. Well, because the money is in a designated revenue expenditure account, it's got to stay in there because sponsors donated to Riverfest in Riverfest name. We have to keep that account intact. Let me back up. So the current thought is we will still have a Riverfest. One, because the account's set up that way, and two, because our recreation manager, Brent Casey, firmly wants to continue to have an event like Riverfest down by the river each year. So he's going to take it on, and I'll definitely help him. It may or may not have a concert at the end. He does want it to have a concert. And then our civic events folks are going to work on a separate music festival that would be including the river stage, go up through the tiered plaza along the art museum, close Avenue A, add a stage behind Old Town, and at least have a couple of bands throughout the weekend playing as a separate event. So, not really necessarily asking for any direction here because we've kind of solved the problem ourselves. We're going to continue to have Riverfest. It may the name may evolve a little bit, but it'll still be Riverfest. That's it, unless there's any discussion.
Where did you seem to lose the 6,000 this year? Is there a certain area, or is it
Well,
all over, or is it just?
What we've been seeing is the expenses keep going up for all the different items, and our sponsorship level has stayed flat. So that's part of the reason, and then we didn't recoup a good amount of revenue because it rained almost the whole day. People did show up, but just not in the 10,000 that we typically had. It was a good turnout, and folks who showed up had fun, but it rained. That's the reason. Higher expenses and less revenue. Thankfully, we have a cushion in there, so we'll start again with having a Riverfest. I'm not sure we'll keep it on the same weekend. We may move it a little bit. Depends on the school football schedule and anything else going on.
Okay.
That was it.
I guess I look forward to hearing about what you're going to do
Whatever
with the
it is.
Riverfest.
Could you
We're
roll
gonna
it,
call it Brent Fest.
could you roll it
I
into
think
the
it's a
4th of
great
July Fest?
It's which one?
Could you roll it into the 4th of July Fest?
Oh.
And call it River Fest?
You know, well,
Who knows?
yeah, we talked about doing it in the summer. But we'll come up with something. Brent will come up with something. Brent Toberfest.
You know, if we could have it, I think, you know, if it's profitable, then, yeah, but if it's
Right,
a
that's-
drag, then, you know, do we have concessions at these things, or do we make any money?
Yes, yes. We have
Okay.
vendors. We get money off of the food vendors, the exhibitors, the wristbands to let the kids play in different things. The concessions from the concerts. So we get different revenue streams, and if it gets rained out, we lose those revenue streams.
Right.
But I guess that's why we have a buffer. What I was going to mention is to argue against it is that for most city-run events like date night, we need that revenue as part of Recreation's operations budget. For Riverfest, it doesn't feed into any operation budget. It's its own standalone account, so it's not really helping us meet our revenue targets for operation expenditures.
When are you thinking about moving it to?
To win? Well, Brent, any thoughts?
Curious.
April and October are your wettest months.
No, we're not actually looking to move it very far from where it is currently in September. Sidney and I just talked briefly earlier today. He's in here now. I texted him and said we're starting the conversation. He came running. So we're going to work together and see what we come up with. We'll have something for you in the very near future. I do want to add in the last 2 years, which we did not do so well in the financial part. 2017, we did not have a concert, so we did not bring in that revenue for that concert, but we still broke even. This year it rained, as Mr. White mentioned. So we still had lots of people out there. And in my head, when you get 10,000 people from the city of San Angelo and nobody coming from out of town and they're attending a one-day event put on for them, and it's a family fun, friendly event, we don't need to get rid of that. We need to keep it.
I've attended the last 3 or 4 years, and it's a really impressive event just because it's so recreationally pointed. You've got little bitty kids playing soccer, and their parents are there, and they've got a recreational blow-up deal. They've got the blow-up houses that the kids can jump
the
and
kangaroo
play
we
and
had
climb.
this
And I mean, it's awesome if the weather would just
They need
cooperate.
to get Willie Nelson to come like he did in Austin or
Gosh.
something.
And I could foresee even more events like on the river stage, maybe not concerts going on, but, you know, some examples of this, if the city has any dance programs, I mean, you know, where you have the kids up there, you know, lots of demonstrations on that same day because that gets the parents there too, you know. I mean, my mind just goes, whoa, the different things you could pull in to that area that are city-related.
Yes,
and help
absolutely.
promote your activities and your events that you do throughout the year.
I agree 100%. And like I said,
And maybe even the pool. The pool's right there. You could.
we actually attempted to bring the pool into it this year and have another adult night that evening at the pool, and they would be able to oversee the concert down at the river stage from the pool area, but the rain
It
canceled
rained.
those things. So nothing we could do about that, but you know, there were still people out there, as Mr. White said. I was totally impressed with the number of people that stayed out in the rain because it is such a great event. So
You sell umbrellas.
yeah, we'll have to do that.
And,
It wasn't
and at one point, he had the adult Olympics towards the end of the day. And it was maybe 20, 30 adults, and they were having a blast. And at one point I looked over at him and I said, not a single one of them is on their phone. They're all having fun. And so that's the point of it.
Glad you're doing it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I think that was our last item, but just the one note here for consideration of future agenda items, and then our board meeting, because our meetings always fall on Thanksgiving and Christmas, we always merge the November and December into one meeting earlier in December. So we're looking at December 13.
So future agenda items, I wouldn't mind having some kind of report from the committee about the Lake Nasworthy, about whether they've come up with some kind of prioritization, whether they've met with the city manager, the mayor, or the HOA, and how that is progressing. It doesn't even have to be very long. Anyone else?
Got it?
Okay. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
So, we're done.